trying to find out what that meant. And Fede was like, wait a second, why are we doing this when we can actually call the guy that wrote it, James Cameron, and ask him himself?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, I'm very excited for the film. I'm a big time Aliens fans. I'm sure you guys are too. Rodo, what's it like for you finally? Your vision along with Fede is going to come to the screen. I must say it's genius that you guys set it between Alien and Aliens, because no one's ever really explored that 57 years in between.
Yeah.
So it's clever. So how do you and Fede, like, were you watching movies and then decided, okay, that's a time span we need to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, it came out basically the idea that we wanted this movie to be some sort of hybrid between the first one and the second one, right? In terms of the story type, the genre, the feeling that both movies evoke. So we wanted to do that, you know, put those two in a blender and come up with a film that would condense all the elements that made those two films what they are. And then, you know, of course, having those 57 years in between the first one and the second one in the story world, right, was a very fertile ground for us to start brainstorming and come up with ideas of what could happen in that period, right? So that was it. You know, we came up with our premise and we built a story around that, and here it is. A couple of years later, the movie's coming out.
Hey. And Carlos, Charles. Is it Carlos or Charles? Carlos. Okay, it says Charles on there. Well, congratulations on the film as well. Shogun, beautiful costumes there. My God.
Thank you.
So you went from like very elegant, exotic to scrappy, right? So what was that like for you?
Yeah, but you know, every project is different, and every project, you know, has their own challenges. And so, you know, I take every single project as if it's just a unique journey and experience. And the fact that I've worked with Fede already 4 times is already a treat on its own. You know, I love working with him. I love collaborating with him. He's a true artist, a true visionary, and I always love to support his work.
So how did you borrow from that, both, since you have that time frame? Where did you borrow from and what did you rely on?
I think for me, the most important thing was to design the colony, you know, to start with that. So that was the first step towards designing the costumes for our lead characters, you know, understanding the different groups of people that were surviving in that colony that used to be abundant, but then fell apart. So you have all these different groups of miners and farmers that I had to design costumes for. And then I took certain elements of those different categories and I, you know, sort of, you know, brought them into the world of our lead characters so that it would make them really believable and anchored in some kind of reality.
And then Rodo, back to you. You had James Cameron and Ridley Scott involved. How nerve-wracking is when you go to present the script to them? Like, what is going through your mind? Like, are you really nervous? Do you take a little drink to relax?
Well, Ridley Scott is the producer of this movie. Right. So he was very much involved and helped us along the way. You know, what producers do usually, you know, they read your script and they give you notes. They watch your first cut of the movie once you shot it and they give you notes. And, you know, they have so much experience and so much wisdom that usually it's just 1 or 2 things that improve the movie in such a way, you know. So it's great to have someone like him. On regards to James Cameron, he's not an official producer. This movie is not produced at all, but we're very fortunate to have met him before, back when Don't Breathe 1 came out. He loved that movie and we met him. And Fed is being, you know, actually I think James invited him to the set when he was shooting Avatar 2. So they developed a relationship. So at one point we were watching Aliens and we had some doubts about something that didn't add up logically, a very small detail that we couldn't quite make sense of what it meant. We started looking it on, you know, there's forums online everywhere that it's fans of the movies that you know, analyze every single detail in movies. We're trying to find out what that meant. And Fede was like, wait a second, why are we doing this when we can actually call the guy that wrote it, James Cameron, and ask him himself? Which we did. And he was so generous to spend like 2 hours with us on a Zoom call. And we were able to pitch him our story for Alien Romulus. He loved it. And we just discussed alien and sci-fi, whatever. So that was his involvement, unofficial involvement. It was just basically, you know, and he said it, you know, he actually said, guys, this was great because usually nobody calls me because filmmakers think that I'm not even a real person, that I'm unreachable. But I love when filmmakers call me just to discuss film and sci-fi and this kind of stuff, right? So that was it. It was great. It was a blessing, and it gave us a lot of confidence because he loved our take and he loved our idea. So imagine that, you know, James Cameron says it's great, you move forward, you know.
But did you have that pit in your stomach? Like, oh my God, we're going to show it to the greats.
We made Evil Dead with Sam Raimi, and you know, after going through that experience, same thing. You know, it was the first movie, and we had to show the movie to Sam Raimi, who was a master filmmaker, right? And you know, after that, it's kind of like, okay, you know, we've gone through that hoop, and you know, you still get nervous, of course, but you know, you just go.
Yeah. And Carlos, how does because there's unique sets, so do you collaborate with the production designer too, as far as like, so you can contrast clothing? How does that work? I mean, do you have to keep in mind what the set looks like as well?
Yeah, you know, I've already worked with Neiman Marshall, our production designer, on Dumb Breath 1, so we already kind of built a relationship. And I knew since the beginning, when I started looking at the stages, at the sets that he was building, that it was going to be very detailed. And everything, you know, and of course, Fede also is somebody that really takes care of every single detail and wants everything to be broken down and aged properly. And Gallo Olivares' lighting was also very elaborated and, you know, and very specific. And so I wanted, definitely, once I saw that, I realized that my costumes needed to just kind of like be a little bit more invisible in order to create a great balance between their artistic vision and mine, you know.
And lastly, Rodo, were there other ideas floating around, and then you kind of settled on one thing when you and Fede first started writing?
But there's always a million ideas. It's always about you know, making a decision. Okay, this is the path that we're going to walk. It's always that. But once you commit to an idea, you just forget about everything else and you just push forward, right? But I think pretty early, it was pretty quick that we found the premise for this movie, and that we felt that it was the right premise. And actually, we right away, it took us only a couple of days to come up with the idea and the basic premise of the movie. And Fede pitched it to Ridley Scott, and he said, like, that's great, that's the movie, let's do it. So it's pretty straightforward in that regard. Then, you know, it's always tricky, you know, when you pitch an idea, it's just a small idea, you know, like this is going to be the movie, but then you have to actually build the story. And then it gets tricky, and it takes a lot of hard work, you know, usually like a year at least. But it was a smooth ride and a very fun one as well.
And how do you mesh both, you know, Alien and Aliens? One's horror, the other one's a little more action horror. How do you meld the two in a screenplay?
You know what? It comes naturally because that's what we want to see in a movie. That's what we like. Actually, if you watch our movies, I mean, our Evil Dead is a pure horror movie, but you know, it's very actiony. There's the set pieces are I wouldn't say it's not an action horror, but almost. And then Don't Breathe has a little bit of that. Don't Breathe 2 more especially is a lot more action horror. So it's something that we love. And it was not forced into the movie. It's just that it comes out organically out of us. You know, I think both genres, they match really well. They go really well together, action, horror, and sci-fi. So it was just very natural for us to conceive the movie in that world.
All right. Well, thank you both for your time. I cannot wait to see it. I'm seeing it on Monday. I'm very excited. Me and my husband, because we're big, long-time fans. So we're really excited. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.